We are a partnership, which means that he presumably is mired in this mess already. In fact, so switched off is Keir Starmer, he's going to go out today and defend her. And also, just to completely confuse you, having raised taxes to give more benefits, Keir Starmer in his speech today is going to, and I quote, talk about how increased benefit shouldn't happen and they should be cut because people are taking advantage. Are you confused? Because I am. I tell you somebody who isn't, the political editor of The Sun, who doesn't owe me his career because he's a top man. Jack Elsom, good morning.
Good morning, Jeremy, although I am just as confused as most people, I think, about the overall handling of this budget, because it does seem one mighty Botch job, and it'd be interesting to see what Keir Starmer has to say in about an hour's time, I think.
It's extraordinary, mate. I was away last week with our kid playing in a big golf tournament in Spain, and I'm watching this from afar thinking, actually, I'm not very good at the technicalities of a budget. And all I took from it was, you are essentially saying to the British people, who, as I've said already in this hour, go to work, pay taxes, get up, look after their kids, never break a law and ask for jack, I like the pun, to actually... Well, that's a bad thing. What a good thing is to stay at home, have more children. If your kid's got ADHD or anything, still keep claiming, we'll still give you. It is an absolute, in my humble opinion, reach out by a government who are desperately knowing that they are losing the British public. What's this? To get the effect list to vote for them? It's unbelievable to me, Jack. Unbelievable.
Yeah, and when she stood up at the dispatch box, and she's been repeating it all weekend, she says, I'm asking more people to contribute. Everyone has to do their bit. My readers, your viewers, millions of voters will go, hang on a minute, I already do my bit. I get up in the morning and I go to work and I do a hard day's graft. Meanwhile, there are also millions of people out there that are not doing their bit. So rather than rinsing the productive part of the economy, how about we actually look at I think it's about 5.6 million people on some kind of out-of-work benefit. Now, as you said, there'll be people out there who will genuinely need some sort of safety net. There was a caller in to talk last week, I think he went viral saying this, but there are lots of people who will not. And since COVID especially, the amount of people claiming personal independence payments has just skyrocketed. But Rachel Reeves, in her budget last week, barely mentioned the subject of welfare. And I think many people thought it was the elephant in the room because it just was totally left untouched. Now, it seems that Keir Starmer, after a pretty torrid backlash to this budget last week, is now being panicked into coming out and saying, oh, no, actually, we are going to be doing something about the welfare bill. And let's see what he says in about an hour and a half's time, because it better be good to appease, I think, the anger out there in the country.
There's real anger. And I remember when he was standing to be Prime Minister, he droned on about a lot, no tax rises, which turned out to be an absolute lie. He lied to the farmers and the pensioners and waspy women. But he kept saying, politics in the last few years has been about the individual. I'm going to put country before party. I think it will be an absolutely fair point to make that in most people's opinion, most of what these two are now doing is to shore up their own position. They're incapable of passing anything in their manifesto because they're backbenchers. I mean, you talked about welfare then. He tried to knock just a measly $5 billion. We all know that disaster a few months ago, and ended up backtracking. He'll backtrack on this. He is absolutely at the mercy. And I said it during the election, and I remember you saying, you're right, Jez. He promised too much to too many different people, and he spends his entire time, I now think, trying to rob Peter to pay Paul, to not upset Mary or the comrade at the U Party. Nightmare. And we're almost hamstrung. And financially, and when I watch to talk about, like, oh, Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng, I've a question for you. You're a political, you're switched on. How long before the markets go, this woman's incompetent, she should go as well? The markets, the people that call the shots.
Well, I think to be fair, if Rachel Reeves has three audience, Labour MPs, the markets and voters, I think last week's budget was a budget for Labour MPs and markets. The markets didn't seem to have an adverse reaction because she's left herself with £20 billion of headroom and she's hiked up taxes on working people. Now, the markets don't really care about what the average Joe is having to pay in income tax, as long as they believe that the government can pay off its debt. So they actually don't mind about big tax rises on working people. But for the voters out there that put their trust in Labour at the last election and took them at face value when they said, we are not going to raise taxes on working people, it's them who I fear about. And that is the tide which is going to be turning. You are totally right, I think, that the budget was one for political survival. They know that they are, I mean, Keir Starmer is the most unpopular Prime Minister on record, Rachel Reeves the most unpopular Chancellor on record. Not just with voters, but before the budget, Labour MPs were really starting to get angry because all of the wish list and the left-wing policies which they wanted put forward, at the start Keir Starmer seemed to be resisting them. Now, he is totally buckled. He knows that May is going to be an incredibly tough time in the local elections, probably get booted out of power in Wales, might fail to take Scotland, which they looked like they were going to do a few years ago. And so they know that they are under a lot of pressure politically. So last week's budget was definitely one for the parliamentary Labour Party. But as we've already seen, they're never going to be happy. They're never going to give Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer a thumbs up. Even when they tried to water down the Employment Rights Bill last week, we saw MPs come out of the woodwork again and say, this isn't good enough. The problem is, I think now, is because they've spent so much political capital marching their MPs up the hill with things like winter fuel and benefits, whatever. It just seems that they have such little bandwidth to be able to operate in now, and they are just focusing at the 400 or so Labour MPs rather than turning to the country who actually do want restrained welfare spending. They want their taxes to go down. But at the moment, it seems that they are just tunnel vision focused on appeasing the markets on the one hand, fair enough, but also Labour MPs. And that is a dangerous strategy because you leave the voters in the lurch.
Well, it's very interesting what you said. John in Nottingham texting whilst you were talking, and he is, to me, symptomatic of what the people of this country are at. Working people, the alarm clock group, all the people who are saying, why do I live my life correctly? He says, morning, Jez. If the parents of poor kids use their benefits to feed and clothe their children born into poverty, I'd be happy. Instead, they buy scratch cards, alcohol, tobacco and betting slips. There is no excuse to give away my hard-earned money, the tax that I pay, to people who are taking advantage. We've got some breaking news for you as well, Jack, you can respond to. This is KPMG, leading economists, have just warned that Rachel Reeves' stealth tax rage will damage growth next year. Damage growth. This is a government that was elected to say growth, working people. So they've raised taxes on working people, that have increased benefits on people who don't work, and they have, and I don't think we can ever get enough of this, they've absolutely destroyed small and medium-sized businesses by increasing NI. We know that. Workers' rights, it'll all be watered down. The truth is, and even you called me cynical a year ago, I remember it, I've got it on tape, so don't tell me you didn't. I'm old enough to remember that when push comes to shove, what happens with the Labour Party is they promise too much to too many different people, and in the end, we will be skint. That is not me condoning anything that the Tories said, but I said earlier, I watched something over the weekend that Sunak said, and listen, I had no confidence in him. He said, I'm telling you now, even if you boot us from office and vote for Keir Starmer, the average Briton, anybody over 18 will be charged £2,000 plus more under this government. Rishi Sunak was spot on, wasn't he?
Well, that clip that's been resurfacing definitely has come back to bite Keir Starmer. And in fact, it's not just that clip, but there have been absolute myriad of footage from the election and even just after where they said Labour will not have to raise your taxes. We will not raise it on working people. They said that their plans would require £8 billion of tax rises. Across Rachel Reeves' first two budgets, there has been £66 billion worth of tax rises. Now, how they can justify that, I think, is beyond belief. But the fact that they are almost sort of resorting to verbal gymnastics and contortions and say, well, actually, if you read the small print of the budget, then you'd realise that we were only talking about the headline rates of these income tax, VAT and national insurance, not these stealth taxes, which are going to drag 1 million more people into the higher rate. And even then, we had the headline rate of national insurance on employers going up, which clearly is going to have a big effect on workers. And also, as you say, hammer the growth prospects. There was a time where Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves' flagship priority or mission, as they called them quite tediously, was the highest sustained growth in the G7. The highest sustained growth in the G7, and then asked by journalists, well, what if you don't manage to get the highest sustained growth in the G7? They said, don't be so defeatist. Well, where are we now? Growth has been downgraded by the Office of Budget Responsibility. It's not bailing out the Chancellor and Keir Starmer in the way they said it would, negate the need for any sort of tax rises or spending cuts. They've dodged spending cuts. They're not going to put borrowing up, which is good. But we're left with tax rises, £30 billion of them last Wednesday. And so I think that people that voted for Labour at the last election will rightly be feeling a bit cheesed off over the last few days, because they said one thing. They were adamant they were going to cut the welfare bill and welfare spending. They were adamant they weren't going to put up taxes on working people. And in the last few days, we seem to have the complete opposite.
Couldn't agree more. Always great to have you on, my friend. Busy man. Jack Elsom, political editor of The Sun. So much response. Very quickly, Stuart Brown. Good morning, Jez. It's so obvious now that Rachel Reeves has lied to the British public and thought she could trick us into being duped out of more money so that Labour and their cronies can give their voters, or give people they want to vote for them, the opportunity. Rob says Rachel Reeves doesn't seem worried about the children of working people she is pushing into poverty by upping their taxes. Let's just repeat very quickly what Jack Elsom just said. They promised £8 billion worth of tax increases. Actually, £66 billion. 66 billion. So what's that? 8 times what they promised. Let's go to the Shadow Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, frontbench Tory, top man as well. Alex Burghart, good morning. Welcome to Talk Breakfast. How are you?
Morning. Thanks for having me on.
Pleasure. It is extraordinary to me that even now, on the front of the Times, we're hearing that cabinet ministers are now briefing to newspapers against their own chancellor. Today, Keir Starmer's going to come out and defend her, whilst also apparently and weirdly saying, I want benefit cuts, because it was only last week he was spending more. These two, who are inextricably linked at the hip, are in major trouble, aren't they, Alex?
Yeah. We've got to hope that the ship is sinking, because these two are really, really floundering on the rocks now. What we saw last week, I think, was quite extraordinary. Not only did we have a second disastrous budget in a row, budget that's going to make your listeners and viewers much worse off, we also found out that the Chancellor lied to the country in the run-up to the budget, saying that she had a big black hole and the only thing that she was going to be able to do to fill it was to break her manifesto promises and raise taxes. And it turns out, actually, there wasn't a black hole at all. What she really wanted to do was raise taxes so she could spend more on welfare in order to keep the Labour backbench happy. And so now, in order to, what's really happening below all this is, in order to try and save her political skin, she has put up taxes on tens of millions of people. It's just totally unacceptable.
And it's really interesting, isn't it? And by the way, fair play to you. You must love your job, standing there in 50-mile-an-hour winds in the middle of a field on a Monday morning. The thing is, and I made the point just now, Alex, that they talked about growth and working people and all these things, and seemingly almost everything this government has done seems to be to the detriment. But if you step back and you go, Labour has always attacked who they see as the aspirational and the wealthy. This isn't. This is working men and women. This is the alarm clock Britons who do it every single day. And I was abroad last week with my kid, and I just remember thinking, you are sending a message to hard-working people that you might as well sit on your backside and shell out a few more kids. And that is so, so dangerous, isn't it?
So dangerous. Exactly. You're saying, like, what's the point? And you kind of hear it from my constituents in Essex all the time. It's like, what's the point? Why should I? A lot of people in my constituency run businesses, and they're seeing their profit margin squeezed and squeezed and squeezed. And one very good business said to me over the weekend, said, without a profit margin, you're just a busy fool. Right, and that's how they feel that the Chancellor is making them. Massive taxes on businesses, huge regulation, and now taxes on working people as well, and that money going straight into benefits when we should be building a benefit system that's getting people into work, because that's what's good for the economy, right? What you want to have, what the Conservatives have set out, is a plan to reduce public spending so that we can reduce the deficit and we can reduce people's taxes, and we'll get growth, right? It's not rocket science, it's very straightforward, just requires some tough choices, and we're the ones prepared to make it. But this lot aren't going to do that. We're going to have more of the same, because they don't understand where growth comes from. Without the private sector, without people who work hard, there is no growth, there won't be any public services, we will go bust.
No, I couldn't agree more. A couple of things very quickly. We've got Nigel Farage on the show after 9:30. He's come out today and said that Reeves must face a sleaze probe by the ethics advisor to the Prime Minister over her lies. Did the Tory party agree with him?
Yeah, but look, it goes much further than that. What the Conservatives have written to the FCA this morning, over the weekend, the FCA saying that the financial regulator needs to investigate the Chancellor. You'll have seen some people on social media over the weekend, very senior people in the city, saying if a private company had been involved in this sort of deceit and manipulation, the executives would be fired and they would potentially face criminal prosecution. That's how serious this is. So, forget the ethics advisor in Parliament. This is something much, much bigger, and that's why we're asking the FCA to step in. We've also, I wrote to Keir Starmer last night saying you've got to send your Chancellor to the House of Commons tomorrow morning so that she can answer questions about what she's done. This is totally unacceptable. A lot of information's come to light since she gave the budget on Wednesday. It's time that she comes into the mother of all parliaments and faces the music.
Don't think she will, because he's inextricably linked. And on a day where it doesn't really get any better for Starmer, I just wanted to get your response to the breaking news 2 hours ago. Even I nearly fell off my chair. Keir Starmer employed a criminal as the Transport Secretary. That went wrong. But perhaps the highest accolade I could possibly give this man is that the former anti-corruption minister, ladies and gentlemen, Tulip Siddiq, former anti-corruption minister, created by her friend Keir Starmer, has overnight been sentenced to 2 years imprisonment in Bangladesh on charges of corruption, Alex Burghart. You could not make this stuff up, pal, could you?
That's right. I mean, if we were writing an episode of The Thick of It and we put this in, the editors would say no one's gonna buy that, scrap it. So there is just sleaze after sleaze and scandal after scandal, deceit after deceit, and epic incompetence with this lot. And I'm afraid it's going to last as long as they do.
It's really good to have you on, my friend. Haven't had you on before. Look forward to speaking many times. Excellent. Thank you very much. Alex Burghart, Shadow Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster there, stood outside. Such an assuming job.